o'clock. And welcome to our council meeting for June 7th. First up, I'm going to call this meeting to order, and then we are having a public hearing. So this is a recorded meeting, and if anyone is here who does not want your personal information, including your image, your voice, your names, your opinions, or any other personal information disclosed by you during the meeting, you need to know it's collected by the city under the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act for purpose of your participation in public input. If you have any questions about the collection of your personal information, please contact our DCO at roslyn.ca. And if you do not wish your personal information to be collected, please do not join the live council meeting. And that is about it, because I don't think we have anybody here with us who isn't a delegation. So, okay, so let's have adoption of the agenda for our public hearing. Terry and Andy, and we're all good for that. And the purpose of this public hearing is to consider zoning amendment bylaw 2759 for 1926 Kirkup, and it's to rezone the lands located there from R1 residential infill to R1 residential infill. Wait a minute, I'm missing that. Okay, so we've got the Deputy Corporate Officer will provide information on how the public hearings were publicized and any correspondence or petitions that we have heard from.
The public hearing was publicized in the May 20th and May 27th editions of the Roslyn News, and in accordance to the Local Government Act. The city has received no submissions regarding this public hearing.
Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to ask if there's anybody in the gallery that would like to speak to this. You can raise your hand and you'll be authorized to do so. Give it just a minute. Anyone want to speak to this public hearing? Doesn't look like it, so I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, Andy, okay, Janice, and we're off the public hearing. Okay, so now we are going into our regular meeting, and the electronic meeting notice still applies, and we have public input. Let me see if there's anybody joined us for public input. Okay, a few more people have come. Is there anyone who would like to speak to us during public input? If you are a delegation, I will call on you in a minute. We have Kristen Moore who would like to speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So not Kristen, it's Eric Blair, Kristen Moore's husband.
Okay, hello.
So I just wanted to go back on the unforeseen plumbing costs that we talked about last meeting, and I wasn't able to chime in, but I'm here now, and I felt like the issue was maybe left a little unsolved at the last meeting.
Okay. Tell us more.
Well, it's in regards to the 4-hour minimum call out for the gentleman to come and shut off my water whilst it was filling up my basement. And I don't know if you guys remember, but you know, we sort of disagreed on how the information was presented to me at the time in regards to how much it was going to cost. So I was sort of, I was told when it was happening, you know, there was $100 fee, which I said okay to, and I signed off on, only later to get the $500 bill. And, you know, it felt to me like that wasn't, it came as a surprise because it wasn't communicated on site when everything was happening, that there would be this larger bill coming, or that I was responsible for that, so on and so forth. And I know Chris had mentioned that there was a few other people, I think, that this has happened to. And I was also curious to see what, how that was resolved, or if you guys are able to expand on those at all.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and we did feel that there might be some better, you know, tactics that staff could use in communicating that. I mean, that policy has been in place, you know, a long time. And I think the way we left it was actually staff was going to come back with some potential changes to how the policy is implemented. The policy hasn't changed, right? But I don't know. I'm going to just see if staff wants to comment on this, because I don't really have anything more at the moment. There's Scott. Scott, would you like to speak? Or yeah, there you are.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Moore. Yeah, basically what was presented at the last meeting, we discussed regards of the information that was put in place. Since then, the direction was to better communicate through the workforce, and I did update with staff to remind them to make sure that they clearly vocalize what they're doing for the on-call staff. And plus, we updated our website since that time. Regarding this, I did bring back to you, Mayor and Council, there are options out there to look if you want me to if you want to direct me to look at different ways of the finance part of these things. But as per the bylaw, this is what we've done.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, so we did not add this to the agenda to any of the suggestions that Scott had made, and maybe we should. I think that slipped by me there, actually, to add something, to suggest that we add something on there and give you further direction. You know, we have been, you know, this bylaw has been in place for a while, and I think there are some improvements in our communication for sure that we could do. Not that that's going to help, you know, Eric and Kristen at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else want to comment on this? Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll chip in a little bit there, Kathy. I mean, I don't have perfect recollection of our conversation, but my understanding of it was that we were happy with the fee structure, that you know, we wanted to assure that we got cost recovery on these things. And, you know, it may seem a lot to some people, but that's really just what it cost us, and that we did want to have cost recovery. And, you know, but we acknowledge if people aren't clearly understanding what they're getting themselves in for when they utilize this service, then you know, we want to make sure that they understand it. So we provided some direction to Scott so that, you know, that the communication that we, you know, whether it's on our website or from staff to people that call in, you know, is as clear as it can be. Hopefully that's going to be the case.
Yeah, that's my recollection too. I do recall that we talked about the actual fees being what we need to charge realistically, but that the communication piece, maybe having something written on the work order that people actually sign that says what the hourly rates are, or just to get people the idea that it's not just $100, it actually is the labor rates that get incorporated. Scott, did you want to add something to that?
Well, at this point, I'm just waiting to hear back from you guys for direction.
Okay. Okay. So I think probably at this, since this is public input, we can maybe have a discussion about this. Not right at public input, right? We can bring it into our into either our next meeting if people are okay with that, or when we get into members reports, somebody wants to make a suggestion, we could do it then. If that's all right with everybody. That seem okay?
So I think you know, I guess more what I'm looking for right now. I think what you guys are going for is all good to maybe change the information a little bit, keep everybody more up to speed as to what's happening when these sort of situations arise. But I guess my problem right now is that I don't really feel good about paying the bill, because it does feel, I mean, I feel a little silly saying unfair, but you know, I mean, I suppose I could have done maybe a better job of being more informed, which obviously I am now that it's happened to me, I know. And, you know, I tell people, I try to spread the word so that this doesn't happen to anyone else. So that's on me. And I think on the city's end, you know, it wasn't necessarily communicated as well as it should have been. So then we end up with me having this big bill that I don't feel good about paying. So I think maybe mistakes on both ends. And to me, a reasonable solution to this would be that we split this bill. Like, I'm happy to pay half of it. And we move on.
I've got to admire your chutzpah there, but I mean, this is not an optional service. I mean, you need the city to turn off your water.
Oh, certainly. I mean,
this is not, we don't negotiate because you don't like these things. I mean, you received a service. Yes, we if we're getting feedback that people aren't, our communication isn't as good as it could be, there's no malice there. There's no intent to try and misrepresent the situation. This is a service you need to use. You can't negotiate. We don't negotiate on these things.
Yeah, I think what we can do, though, I think Eric makes a good point that perhaps there were mistakes on both sides, and perhaps it would be good for us to have this discussion, not during public input, but I think we could do it in members' reports. If someone wants to make a suggestion, either that there is no waiver, there is a partial waiver, something like that, we can have that discussion then. But I'd rather do it then rather than at this point, if that's all right. Okay, all right. Thank you, Eric. And yeah, I know it's not good to get surprised with a bill, but at least the water got turned off, and that's a good thing. So
indeed. So where do I go from here then in regards to this?
Well, you've given us your input, and that's great. I think we'll have a discussion about this, or we may end up referring it back to staff, or we may have some kind of a discussion to make a decision about it later in the evening. And in any case, we'll let you know.
Okay, and that there was other people that this sort of a thing happened to, correct? I think Chris, you mentioned that last time, that you had thought maybe there were some folks that a similar thing had happened.
Well, the emergency aspect of it, Eric, is unfortunate for sure. And yes, there has been other emergencies, myself included, that have had to have the call out. So, as Stu pointed, we're tied with what our bylaw says, but we will discuss it for sure.
Okay, well, that sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks for your time, and I'll just wait for an email back from Scott then.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us in public input about topic on the agenda or something else? I'm not seeing any hands waving up. So we will take a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Motion to approve the agenda, Janice and Andy, all in favor of the agenda? Okay. And now we have our first delegation, and that is from the Be Amazing campaign. I'd like to welcome Ms. Kathy Peters to join us.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Human sex trafficking and sexual exploitation for the purpose of prostitution is the fastest growing crime in the world, and it's very much here in BC. So what is human trafficking? It is the recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, or exercise control over a person for the purpose of exploiting them. The key word is exploitation. This is modern day slavery. Here are some stats. 13 years old is the average age of recruitment into the sex industry. It is much younger for Indigenous girls. In the Lower Mainland, the target age now has dropped to 10 to 12-year-old girls. COVID has made this much worse. Traffickers are very organized and sophisticated. 54% are Indigenous. They are severely overrepresented in the sex industry, and it's much higher numbers in urban centers. This is the worst case of systemic racism in the country. I shared this with the BC Indigenous chiefs and the Federal Minister of Justice, David Lametti, a couple of months ago. At the very least, Indigenous women and girls want forensic nurses and rape kits. 82% involved in prostitution had childhood sexual abuse or incest, which is preparation for prostitution later on. 72% live with complex PTSD. This is the worst form of trauma a human being can experience. 95% in prostitution want to leave. It is not a choice, it is not a job, and it is not work. 86% have housing needs. 82% need drug rehabilitation. And here's the new stat. 84% of prostituted persons are pimped or trafficked. So it's not a majority at all that are doing it of their own volition. It's a very small number. I've been raising awareness about sexual exploitation and specifically child sexual exploitation and trafficking to every city council, MLA, MP, and police agency in BC since the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act became federal law in 2014. I've been raising awareness about this law so the police would enforce it, so the public would understand it and be able to report it. The law has 3 parts. Number 1, it targets the demand by targeting the buyer of sex. The predator, trafficker, pimp, facilitator, exploiter, John, buyer of sex are criminalized. Number 2, it recognizes the seller of sex as a victim, usually female, and is immune from prosecution. Number 3, exit strategies are put in place to assist the victim out of the sex trade. This law focuses on the source of the harm, the buyers of sex and the profiteers. The clear statement from Parliament was that girls and women in Canada are not for sale, and this is the RCMP poster, that they are full human beings with dignity and human rights. Vancouver and Toronto are global sex tourism hotspots. Canada, and this is shocking, the public don't know this, is known as a child sex tourism destination. And I got that from the Trafficking in Persons Report 2020 from the US State Department. And the excellent book on this is by Dr. Robert Christmas, Sex Industry Slavery, Protecting Canada's Youth. He is a Winnipeg police officer. This is his PhD thesis. Council has received my package of handouts. These handouts are a good start for addressing human trafficking, especially the handout that I gave you on preventing child trafficking. My website is also very good, and it's quite new, the Be Amazing campaign. The global sex trade is moving very fast or growing fast. It is targeting our children because children is where the money is. Fueled by the internet where most of the luring is taking place. Contributing factors to a growing sex industry is globalization, unregulated technology, no surprise, limited law enforcement, and very little prevention education. And that's the bit that I do. Canada has a new national human trafficking hotline number. There it is. I sent you a wallet card with that. And provincially, we have the Office to Combat Trafficking in Persons and Victim Link. Pornography is fueling the sex industry and creating the market for commercially paid sex. Men and boys are the buyers of sex and are the key to end exploitation. And I think the Moosehide campaign is getting onto that. Our boys and men need to understand, and I got this line from the Vancouver Police Department, that there's a sacred part of the woman they have no right to. So what can you do in Rossland? I suggest a very simple strategy. You can reduce the demand by targeting complicit businesses. You diminish the supply by education and public awareness. Train your business licensing managers what to look for when granting business licenses. This is a very effective way to give the message to the sex industry it is not welcome in your community. For example, number 1 is unregistered massage and body rub parlors, and number 2 is nail spas. Then we've got holistic health centers, day spas, modeling agencies, tattoo parlors, escort services, cheap bars and hotels, men's clubs, Airbnb, VRBO, casinos, strip clubs, organized crime clubhouses, truck stops, homeless camps and tent cities, work camps, dance clubs, group homes and foster homes, pool halls, rec centers can all be typical covers for sex trafficking and exploitation. If there are crime clubhouses, use land use bylaws to remove them. They did that in Manitoba. Regarding hotels and motels, Ontario, which is best practices, in an effort to curb trafficking, they mandate the registration of every guest who's physically in the room. The sex industry is targeting our youth, children, and vulnerable in every BC community, and schools are the recruiting grounds for gangs and sex trafficking. A critical deterrent are the school liaison officer programs in schools. The officers prevent crime and protect the vulnerable. Any anti-police narrative is going to harm our communities because they only treat people trained to enforce the law. BC is getting further and further behind every province in Canada in both enforcing the federal law, which they're not doing at all, and raising awareness with prevention education. Public awareness in BC is completely lacking. That is why I sent information packages to all 190 city councils and regional districts in BC to warn you all of this rapidly growing crime. And I have been working on this for 40 years, just so you know. I have 3 asks. Number 1, could I present to any stakeholders in your community? Number 2, could you alert the Premier and the Solicitor General that this crime is a priority in BC and needs funding for provincial law enforcement and a provincial awareness campaign? BC needs an interagency human sex trafficking task force similar to what is available for drugs and gangs. And number 3, could you write me a letter of support? I did meet with Mike Farnworth just a couple of weeks ago. And last week I met with Victoria Police Department. I work closely with law enforcement and with the RCMP Assistant Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. That's very disturbing presentation for sure. I mean, we're a very small town here in the interior, and these are, you know, shocking to hear of these kinds of things happening all around us. Our policy is to get back to it for any requests that we hear from the delegation at our following meeting, which will be June 21st. So thank you for joining us. All right, our next delegation is from our Economic Development Task Force, and that is Mr. Jim Fursberg, and I think Derek is presenting tonight. Is that right? Do I have that right? Go back to my view here, hold on. Okay, so anyway, we'll get our next delegation up.
Hello.
There's Jim. Hello, Jim.
Yeah, no, I'll be presenting. Just Derek is just acting as a backup if I miss something or forget something if I'm asked a question.
Okay, welcome.
Yeah, and so can I share my screen? Is that going to work? Let's find out.
I think so.
Which one is it? Oh. So you should be looking at a slide deck. Is that working?
Yep, that's working.
Okay, and then let's just see if this works. Did that turn into only seeing the slide?
Yes.
Excellent.
Working like a charm.
Okay, good. So these slides were put in your package, and we decided to presume that you had read them, and so I'm not gonna go through anywhere near all the slides. You'll be relieved to know. In fact, I'm only going to touch on 3 or 4 of them just to hit the highlights. And the main thing, this is a sort of table of contents of all the slides. And it says here, and I'm going to reiterate on the next slide, that what we're really looking for here is a discussion, questions, comments, any feedback that you want to give us. One of the things I learned from the last Economic Development Task Force is staying close to council and staying close, not getting too far away from your views of what we should be working on and what we should be doing is really important. So that's why I wanted to bring this back so that we could hear from you and make sure that we were course correcting as we go. So TLDR, for some who don't know it, means too long didn't read. So this is the very short version of the entire slide deck. It basically says that we've gotten started by using a 4-phase what is the state of Roslyn business. We're in phase 2, which was to use Thought Exchange to engage with local businesses and organizations. And we are proposing a path forward with some actions. And as I say, the main ask here is for feedback, comments, and questions. The high level view of the exchange was this. We had set a goal of 50. We thought, and in my fears, I thought we might never get above 10. So we had set it to have 50 people participate, and we got over that in terms of people rating with stars. So we were happy with that. We themed all the thoughts, and they broke down into these groups, which, and these were all laid out in much more gory detail in your packages with the slides. And the thing I wanted to focus on really is so we have more phases to go. So this isn't our total action plan, but these are some things that we thought we could do. And I wanted to give you the kind of flavor of how we're thinking as a task force on the actions we're going to take. I think one of the things about our task force is everybody seems very interested in moving ahead and doing things rather than talking or creating reports or slide decks. So these are the kind of things we want to take on. The number one issue that I saw was our Net Promoter Score was not terrible, also not great. So it's really a measure of how well our businesses, organizations think of Rossland as a place to do business. So this, I think, is a good baseline for us and something where we can try and understand more deeply around the other issues that are below. The most important, I think, of the outcomes we saw was surprising level of dislike of regulations and taxes. Not that people are in general liking regulations and taxes, but it came up as a pretty hot issue. And we haven't been able to find any further understanding in the data about specifically which regulations or which groups were very worried about it. None of our hypotheses that it was builders or it was various other groups really fits the data. So we need to do some more work here. I think the other not surprising but very hot issue was internet. And I personally believe this is less of an issue of capacity and more of an issue of reliability, because I think many of us have felt the pain of poor internet reliability. So I'm actually personally working on that one, trying to figure out what's going on with our internet providers. Moving through these, I think we also heard about housing availability and affordability. I think there's things happening in the community that could be talked about better. Interesting, concern about a lack of voice for business and membership in the chamber is terrible. So I think there's an opportunity there to work with the chamber. And then the other issues you see, I will say that the last one around thoughtful growth, I think will become a key focus area for us in the future, and trying to figure out, I think growth is happening to Rossland and is going to happen whether we want it or not. And from a business point of view, economic point of view, we believe our goal will be to try and set some directions for the kind of growth we want and to then take action to achieve that growth. So that's the last slide I wanted to show. I wanted to open it up for questions, comments, feedback, anything you want to say to us.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate I think the efforts so far have been excellent. And I think coming to us mid-stage is a really good strategy. So I really appreciate that too. I think I think there was a lot of good in here. I've got some comments on it, but I want to open it up to council and see what else they would like to say. Dirk, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think you identified that there wasn't a lot more rich information, but the thing that struck me is the regulations that are making it difficult for businesses. And I was just curious if there was information on, besides a business license, what regulations those were.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about this, and Janice in particular was, really wanting to know, what it was, but we haven't been able to find it in the data. While Thought Exchange is positioned as a conversation tool, it's actually not a live interactive conversation. So we can't, as part of the Thought Exchange, go back and ask. We are pondering though, and this will be one of the actions we take, is what do we do to try and figure out which regulations? But where we are right now, we can't find it in the data. We can't find out which subgroups, which demographics have the concern. We can't see a pattern in the data. And we also, therefore, can't figure out which regulations. And we tried on all kinds of hypotheses in the data around, well, it must be the builders and the onerous amount of effort to get a building permit, or it must be, maybe it's trying to create a restaurant and how onerous it is to create a restaurant, or, we tried various hypotheses, but we couldn't find anything that fit the data that we have. So it remains I think it's probably the most important of all the things we heard was to understand it better, but we don't have that understanding right now.
Okay, who else? If you need to put your hand up, because I don't see everybody on the screen with the, okay, Terry, good.
Hey, Jim, thanks for that. I really echo Kathy's comments. Great start, good follow through, and I appreciate the check-in here. On the 4 key proposed actions, you said you thought that thoughtful growth was going to be an area of focus for you. Can you talk a bit more about what your thoughts are there, what the task force's thoughts are there, and then how did you pick that, if you will, as where you should focus? And I know it's preliminary, but you could talk a bit more. Thanks.
Thoughtful growth. I think it's probably just the collective opinion of the task force that's going to be where we land up. I don't have data, or I haven't heard this from any of the people we're talking to during the state of business phase, but like I say, our belief is that growth is going to happen to Rossland, or not growth is going to happen to Rossland, and there isn't much we can do about any of that. We're going to be a really interesting place for people to come and live, we believe, or maybe not, but none of that is within our control. What we can control is if we are going to be getting growth, where is it we want businesses or organizations to grow in the community? And there's probably some things we can easily identify we don't want. We don't want heavily polluting major industry. We don't want anything that requires a lot of land. But I think we can also take a more proactive, well, what do we want? What kind of businesses do we want? 10 years ago, with the Economic Development Task Force, we were given a mandate and also adopted it that we wanted tech businesses. We wanted nomadic entrepreneurs. So we did a nomadic entrepreneur report. We tried to create a business hub. We did a number of things around tech businesses. It's possible that could be our thoughtful growth. That feels to me like that train's left the station around tech entrepreneurs, and we're ready for something else in 2021. But that's just my own personal view. So I think the thoughtful growth is really about engaging the community around, okay, well, what do you want? And our first phase, where we just asked on Bubble what businesses, is something also in that direction around, well, yeah, what businesses do people want? We have a bakery now, so I think we can all be really enthused about that. We've picked up a number of the businesses that we wanted 10 years ago. So what do we want next? And thoughtful growth might also be around housing. It could be that the number one issue to get the kind of growth we want is to address a housing problem. I don't want to presume the answer. I just think it's where it's the area we'll end up focusing most on eventually.
Thanks, Jim.
Kathy, do you want me to stop sharing my screen? Because then you can see everybody?
Yeah, I think that would be easier unless people need to look at it. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to make some comments or questions for? Yes, Chris.
Hey, Jim, thanks for this. It's really good. And you guys are doing an awesome job on it. Number 6, talent attraction and retention concerns. Has there been any further discussion? I mean, we're all dealing with this. I think probably each one of the businesses in Rossland is having issues finding somebody if they need somebody. Any discussions around potentially working with the chamber or working with the local community around job fairs or some way of attracting people into these entry-level jobs?
It's a good idea. I think that I think that will come out. I would expect, as you just said, some of our regional partners, which is our next phase 3 investigation, are working on that issue already. And one of the forming things we agreed with regional partners, Kathy and I, was that we wouldn't overlap with them. So I think that's a good focus for us on the task force to go and see if anybody's doing that, or at least doing it in a way that will benefit us in Rossland. Because if you're in Trail and you're doing that, you may not have the same, working on the same kind of talent that we need. So that's kind of one thing. I think it could be a really good project for us to take on. We didn't hear it super clearly in the data. It is number 6 here on our list because it wasn't a super strong standout kind of everybody's having that problem. I know for the business I'm involved in, it's definitely an issue. In fact, most of our growth now occurs outside of Rossland. We're growing way more rapidly outside compared to what we used to. And part of that's just an acknowledgement that many of the problems in Rossland are kind of intractable. The housing problem and the transportation problems are kind of intractable. So and this fits our business needs. So I think it's a good area for us to focus on. I didn't hear it as one of our top things though, but maybe we'll hear that more clearly from the regional players, or maybe we'll hear that more clearly from the community. I'm surprised and interested to hear it from you around your businesses.
I need a lot.
Okay.
Like right now, I'm looking for 9 people. It's and it's very challenging.
And you've got a few businesses going on. Which one of your various shows are you?
I need 1 at the gas station. Sorry, 2 at the gas station, 1 at the liquor store, 5 at the steam shovel. Okay. And 1 at Curiosity. And sorry, I need 1 on my maintenance crew as well.
Okay, that's super interesting. So we'll consider that. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Andy.
Thanks, Jim. Just wonderful work thus far, and thanks to all the volunteers on the task force. Because the data, as you said, is not complete and doesn't afford you all the answers that you're seeking. Do you think there's an opportunity to go back to the business community and do a follow-up, and the idea of having a two-way conversation so that you get, as Chris just provided, kind of, really direct information? And the other thing that I wondered is, do you see an advantage or an opportunity with the OCP review, and what might be available as far as paralleling with the information that comes out of that? And maybe we're in a position to be able to target with the review our business community as well more directly, so that their interests and expectations are also reflected to the advantage of your task force.
Yeah, so absolutely, that's part of the task force conversation is around, how do we go back and how do we find representative businesses? So I think that's kind of part of our ongoing work. For example, in the regulation thing, we really like to understand which, who it is and which, in which regulations. I think the internet, we know who it is, and so hearing from Chris is great. So we did plan that. In fact, we've also thought about bringing some of the bigger or representative employers into the task force to talk to us. We meet for an hour once a week, so we could bring in a guest visitor, once a week and just talk to them. It's also kind of how we're planning to do the regional partners. So yes, we absolutely do plan to do that. Haven't figured out exactly how to do it though, in a way that we feel like we're going to get. Thought Exchange isn't a statistically relevant sample either, but once you get down to the level of one-on-one conversations, you're starting to really heavily sample, and so then you worry that you're not hearing the voice from all. So I do think that's something we will do though. It's great you mentioned the OCP. In some ways, I view the OCP as like a regional partner. They're regionally right here beside us, but they're doing something that's similar, but not exactly the same as what we're doing. I did participate in a OCP economic development focus group, and we had a little chat for an hour, a few of us around economic development. And I'm, like many in the community, I'm sort of watching to see where it goes. I think on the task force, we've talked about the OCP thing. I think we're waiting for it to get past its next stage and see some sort of, like they're very much in the listening stage. I think I'm interested in where they're going to go at the next stage. I've participated directly in the listening stage, and now I'm kind of waiting to see what happens next. And then we'll see. I'm curious to see their sort of draft economic development guidelines or whatever it is they actually create. I'm not even sure. And then maybe we can comment as a task force on that when that happens. But I sort of view them as being similar to LCIC or whoever. They have their mandate includes economic development in Rossland and includes a bunch of other stuff. And so we're just, watching, trying to see what they're going to do. That's kind of how
Jim,
I've been regarding
Jim,
it.
I want to jump in on that. Right now, the OCP, we are taking input we're trying to get as broad assortment of people to comment on the various different topics of the OCP. And it's really important. It's really hard with COVID to get people to participate, right? So anything that your group can do to spread the word, to get people, whether it's people on the task force or other people in the community, to share their thoughts, because that's what the next step is going to come. It's going to be based on people's thoughts. So we need everybody to give their input and give their ideas, so we can make the OCP. It's the official community plan, but it has to come from the community. So that's one thing I would encourage you to not just sit and wait, but also throw some more ideas in there. I mean, there's another session tomorrow night that's housing affordability and economic development. And there's going to be a bunch of people on there, but we need more people to participate. It's only an hour, so But anyway,
I'm humble that you think me and or the task force would have much of an influence on the businesses in the community to get them actually to attend the OCP event. But I think it's an age-old problem. How do you get people to come out to things like that? And you know, we had our own problems. You know, we only got 50 of our businesses to participate in our exchange, and you know that doesn't require you to attend a meeting. So,
yeah,
I think that I'm just, you know, the OCP thing is a bit of a black box for me, so I can't quite tell what's going to happen. But we're trying to participate alongside and also recognize we're not perfectly aligned with the things that they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's important just to know that we're trying to gather input from all Roslinders, right? So you guys on the task force, you have your task force role, but this is also contributing as a citizen, as a member of the community. So it's really important. I mean, you have maybe a little bit more elevated sense of direction of the community because you've been involved in the task forces. But that point of view is really important. So I would encourage all of you to join in. Okay, any other comments for Jim and the task force? Anybody else have anything else to say? Yes, Stuart.
Hey, Jim.
Stuart.
Yeah, you know, describing the OCP in their, you know, they're in their information gathering phase, and you know, again, I haven't really been paying more attention than what we've got tonight about what you've been up to, but it looks like you're also in that information gathering phase. You know, you talk to the community and you've heard some things, and they sort of correspond with the things that I sort of hear when I talk to people as well. I'm just wondering what's your process for, you know, the strategic thinking that's going to take that sort of input and turn it into, you know, the magic that's going to give us the guidance to move forward in a better way.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point about why I'm also like, with the OCP, I don't feel like I can represent, and I did in the focus group, you know, the particular business that I'm involved in. But our task force is so new, I don't feel like I have much of a, you know, I can speak for all, other than the data that is in the slides I shared to you that, you know, we'll share to the OCP.
But you know, when you and I, Jim, we've been, you know, most of us here, we've been living in this community. We hear the same complaints about, you know, taxes and regulation, and we hear the challenges about, you know, internet. We all face the same, you know, how do we balance, you know, quality of life and affordability and all these things. I mean, we all have some appreciation of where we're at, you know.
Yeah. So how do we get
to the next bit?
Yeah, exactly. So I you know, I haven't done this. I mean, our old task force didn't do this approach of, you know, surveying and then having a major strategic aha, and then, you know, we were way more action oriented. We just tried to do stuff. So I'm trying to do something different with this time around to be a little more, you know, top down and organized. But there is the magic moment that I know from the business work, you know, from my work world of you listen, you gather stuff, and then you create a strategy. We just went through this last year within Thought Exchange. And yeah, there is it ends up being a fairly small group that comes up with, okay, here's our straw doggy, here's our ideas. And then you take that out and you get it shot full of holes and you make changes. So I don't know of any magic that happens in that interim. You know all the things you know by what you know from talking to people, as you say, what we all know from living here for years. And you know the things you get from the tools you use, and you talk to partners and you talk to people. And at some point, all you can do is take a crack at it. You like our task force will come up with what we think is what is right, and we'll share it to you all, and we'll share it to the community, and we'll get some things right, and we'll get some things wrong, and we'll iterate, and eventually we'll arrive at something that we think represents a good strategy. It's a fairly messy, long, kind of ugly process. And like I said, we just went through it for the first time at Thought Exchange last year. It took us about 6 months. It was incredibly painful. And we got something great. We got something that's been actually guiding our business for the last year in a really powerful way, and has actually made an enormously positive difference within the company. So I haven't done this in a city before, so I'm guessing how it's going to work. But having just been through the process within Thought Exchange and being quite close to it, I see this is kind of the messy collecting, hearing, it's all over the place. You can't quite tell what you're going to do. And at the other end, you've got this, short, pithy 5 pillars of what we're going to do is these things, and they flow down into actions and tactics and so on. And there's a really ugly, messy part in the middle that's really hard to predict what that output is. Yeah, I don't have a magic bullet here, but that's I think we're on. we're in the gathering phase, and then there's a really ugly creative phase, and then you go into iteration and feedback again. So I don't know. That's kind of how I think we're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. I'm just glad that there is going to be that phase, and I'm not trying to prejudge what that'll be. I'm just glad that it's not just as long as we're not expecting it to just come out of the data, that there is going to be creative people getting in there and trying to turn it into something good.
Absolutely. I mean, even within Thought Exchange, where of course we use our own tool a lot, our strategy came from asking questions initially, and then 3 of us sat down and bashed out the first, actually 2 of us sat down and bashed out the first draft that got changed hugely. But, so my experience has been you listen broadly, and then a small group acts in a creative brainstorming work, and then you go out and you're open to change. And sometimes you change it completely. Like whatever your first idea was turns out to be massively wrong, and you do something different. Sometimes you get it sort of in the right direction and you make a lot of changes. I can't tell I can't foresee that, but that's where I see us going. And that's, I think, on the task force, lots of people are very keen to get going and get action and, get stuff going on. And I think that's how will be the process we follow.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great process. And there's a couple things that you had in this that I really liked. I thought, even though, you're saying, well, you only got 50 businesses, but it was a terrific cross-section of the businesses that we have. And I thought that was a real strength. The other thing I like this, and I was just thinking of Janice when I was reading this, was that the actions proposed that are going to address some of the challenges and the issues presented, like a deeper dive and working to share information to change perceptions with facts. Like, that's awesome, right? And when I had the same question about the regulations, and I thought, there's a perfect thing. If you can just figure out what people are thinking about taxes and regulations, maybe some of that is the deeper dive will show them that actually the regulations aren't onerous, and the taxes, you get a lot of value for what you pay, or, whatever. So I think that's kind of an interesting, that's an interesting approach. And I really like that. I know the first task force did a lot of one-on-one interviews with people, and maybe some of that regulation angst will come out, in that. The other thing I thought when I was reading it, really valuable for the chamber to see this report when you sit down with them in your phase, your step 3 or whatever, to have a real conversation with them, because they're, definitely missing, definitely missing membership up here for sure. So. Okay, so if nobody has anything else, I see there's a comment from Stacy here. Great information from the task force. Oh, Janice, go ahead. Just saying that this is being shared, the EDF stuff being shared with the OCP consultants, and that the draft OCP will be shared with you guys too, of course. Okay, Janice.
Yeah, I was just going to say that although we lumped regulations and taxes together, there was really only one comment about taxes, and it ranked 89th out of 106. So the regulation parts, those regulation parts that we couldn't figure out, came up way ahead of that. And so that's more of our focus. So just so that council understands that, it wasn't, the taxes part wasn't the big part of the discussion, but we had to put it somewhere.
Yeah, and actually that's quite refreshing, because historically we've had the tax thing come up high. So when I read that, I was thinking, oh yeah, our taxes regulation. So really regulation, which is interesting, because maybe our department heads are hearing this too, and maybe they can have a little thought about, well, is there some red tape here? We've got some new eyes at the city. Is there red tape we can start looking at? But honestly, we got to figure out what it is first. So yeah, okay.
And the other comment I was going to make is when we discussed thoughtful growth, concerns about rate of, we gleaned that from some general comments that came out of the Thought Exchange, it was just so cool. I have to thank Jim so much for giving me access to the dashboard, because I just had spent days in it. It was great. There were just some general comments about concerns about growth. They were generally linked, they were often linked to housing availability, staffing availability, affordability, etc. So, that's why growth is obviously a concern. There are some comments of concern, but that's why it's down at the bottom there. They were general, vague, could have gone into any number of the previous categories that Jim outlined.
but that's why one of the session tomorrow for the OCP is housing affordability and economic development, because they are so intrinsically linked, you know. So that's great. Okay, anything else for Jim? Jim, we really appreciate your work and the task force. I see Derek's on there too, and Janet, everybody that's there has done great work so far. So thank you. Great.
And I appreciate the time and the input. And yes, this was exactly what I was looking for, is to hear from everybody and just get a general sense that we're on the right track, so got that. And also I appreciate all the specific feedback. So it was super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and any comments that council has will come through to you through Janice, you know, so that's your good, your direct link.
Yep, we're good.
All right.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so we have some minutes to adopt. This is minutes of the special meeting on May 11th. Do I have a mover? Andy, and a seconder, Janice. Any comments or anything on those minutes? All in favor? Minutes are good. All right, then we had some minutes of the regular council meeting on the 17th. We need a mover. Somebody a mover. Okay, Chris, and a seconder is Dirk. Any comments or questions on that? I have to say I'm happy to see an RFP for our first EV. That's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting to see that going through there. Okay, let's see. So we're done, right? We voted, right? Good, vote. Oh, Janice, do you have a comment or you're voting? Voting, okay. Okay, good, voted. Okay, so next up is a zoning amendment. This is bylaw number 2750, short-term rental zoning removal. This is for adoption. This has been around the block on this one a few times. Mover? Andy moves, Chris seconds. Any comments? All in favor? Favor, okay. And next we have a zoning amendment. This is 2716 for 1615 Nevada Street. We're doing first and second readings on this, and that we're going to schedule a public hearing for July 12th. Mover? Janice and Terry. Do we have any discussion on this? This is a R1 to R1 infill because they're looking to subdivide.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty nice, it looks like they've thought through it and planned it quite well. So it'll be interesting to hear what the neighborhood thinks and what public input we get.
Yeah, it's a pretty big lot there too. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Okay. All right, now we have zoning amendment 2761. This is for 1508 Park Street. Again, we're doing first and second reading, and we are scheduling a public hearing for July 12th. This one is going from a regular residential to short-term rental. Mover? Dirk and Chris seconds. Any comments?
Well, just that I don't know how we more strongly impress upon them the parking. There's already issues with on-street parking on that corner. I know we just got an email about it and I drive through it regularly. We cannot have extra people parked on there. So it just,
well,
they don't
get approved. Yeah, they don't get approved unless they do provide parking. Stacy, would you like to comment on the parking for this application?
Yeah, you're right. They don't get approved if they don't provide the parking. They do have plenty of space to provide parking, and part of the application process is that they make sure that they create those parking spaces, and then bylaw enforcement ensures that those parking spaces are actually used and maintained in the winter, especially.
Yeah, especially in the winter. Okay, any other comments on this one, or I'll call the question? All in favor? Okay. Okay, so now we have got a subdivision referral for proposed boundary adjustment application. This is on Spokane Street, which is, that's a funny one, right? The one where the lot is partially in RDKB and partially with us. So this is that we direct staff to respond to the Ministry of Transportation that we have no concerns regarding this application. Do I have a mover? Andy, and a seconder is Chris. Comments, questions, anything? Nope, all in favor? Okay, good. Next is a development permit application. This is 2197 Columbia. And there's a couple of conditions in here, but I'm not going to read them. This is the development permit for the proposed development on the property at 2197 Columbia. And then there's just the two conditions there in your meeting. I mean, in your agenda. Do I have a mover here? I'm looking on this side of the room. I see Terry and Janice. Good. See, I've got room size here. Okay, any comments on this one? New colors look great.
Yeah, and there was some lively debate at the design review panel about you know, the colors. That was our first meeting with the design review panel. I'll talk more about it in members report, but and I did miss the back end of the final conclusion, but yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, great. Janice, anything? Stuart.
I don't know if this is what people were referring to, but this does seem quite a process to repaint a building. You know, some people might think this is a lot of regulation.
Yes, but this is because we're a heritage town. We have our heritage guidelines. You're right. Maybe that's where it comes in. Terry.
Stuart, yeah, there was. It was actually very interesting because the applicant had much the same attitude about this, and then actually found the conversation and the process in the end quite helpful. And but furthermore, now I'm really cutting into my members report, so I'm just going to give it to you now. But there was a renewed interest by the design review panel to bring back requests from 2017 to have a look at those design review guidelines, to streamline the process, to use more pictures, and to get more clarity and more educational stuff in front of applicants, so that they had a nice clear line of sight to what it was going to take to fulfill their plans. So I hear you. It turned out well in this respect, assuming we pass this though. But yeah, need some tweaking, those guidelines for sure. Yeah, that has been an kind of an open and ongoing issue. And unfortunately, there's just been so many other priorities at the city that hasn't bubbled to the top. And perhaps in the next, you know, reiteration of the strategic plan, that can come up a little more, you know, potentially more important, or it may come up as something that's quite important when people are talking about the OCP. You know, there's ways that this will you know, get brought forward. Okay, I'm going to call the question on this one. All in favor? Okay. All right, now we have the Arts Center referral. This one's really exciting. 2095 Monte Cristo, that we provide any comment to the province. The city has no concerns with this application, and further that we have staff investigate the necessary zoning to allow a leisure facility under P1 zoning, which would apply to, you know, other properties as well. Do I have a mover? Andy, and Stuart seconds. Comments, Andy.
Exciting project, and I'm so pleased to see this group have the patience. It's really and the motivation to go forward with it, because I know, because of it being a provincial building and the other players involved, SD20, that it has been a lot of groundwork to get to this point. So very proud of that group, and I wish them all success in moving forward. Yeah, no, it's great. Stuart.
Yeah, I'm just stoked this beautiful old building is actually going to get used. So it's going to be a real highlight in the community.
For sure. Chris.
Thanks. I echo that, Stu. My concern is the building is as old as it is in the heritage status. Who's going to maintain the building?
They're going to get grants.
Who's grant?
Yeah. Probably a lot from Columbia Basin Trust. Columbia Basin Trust has already been in discussions with them, right? They've been talking, and there is heritage funding out there, and I think they're going to have a thoughtful process to bring it back. Stacey, you want to comment?
Yeah, they're also fully aware of what needs to be done on the building. They have the report that the school district had done a few years ago. And so they're fully aware of what be done and when, and potential costs. Admittedly, the costs are a little older now, but still they are aware of that. So.
Yeah.
I noticed on page 135, the picture of the servicing, and there's no servicing to the building at all.
We noticed that.
Like, what?
The sewer
I think maybe our inventory, service inventory, needs to be updated a bit. It's not just draining into the sewer, into the basement, right? So, okay. So I call the question on this one. We're very excited about it. All in. Okay, great. All right. So now we've got a letter. We're going into correspondence, and the Roslyn Light Opera players want a letter of support for grant funding applications. This is just general applications. They don't have a specific application in mind. And as you know, they own their own building. They're just gathering support for when they can get appropriate grant applications. So do we have a mover for that? Terry and Janice, any comments? No. Okay, all in favor? Okay, good. Okay, the other thing in correspondence was the letter from Minister Conroy about modernizing the forest policy. And I thought the thing that was interesting in there is that there's going to be some, town halls. And I just want to make sure council's all aware that it would be good for us to, have a representative there when we know that there isn't really a motion to do with this, just sort of general information. Stuart?
Yeah, I just wanted to volunteer myself if necessary or I'm available. I have participated in the old growth strategy for BC and have been to the previous consultations on this matter, so I'm pretty up to speed on it and would happy to represent the community's interests when that happens.
That's great. I was hoping you'd say that. Andy?
Yeah, I was also willing to participate. I don't know how that it's going to be set up, but like Stuart, I was involved in some earlier conversations with the consultants that put together the old growth report. So be keen to see where it's going to go as well. Thanks. Yeah,
it's good. It's good to see some action coming forward. And I think community involvement especially in the Kootenays is good. Okay, so that's it. Boy, we are just zooming right through. So we now have members reports. Janice, I'm going to start with you.
All right then. On May 18th and 25th, I attended Economic Development Task Force meetings to develop the presentation that you received this evening. They're a great group to work with. As you've seen, they've collected some good information. As messy as the middle part of our plan is, we have one. So they're a treat to work with, absolutely. May 27th, attended a meeting with Richard Cannings. He gave an update on the recent federal budget, some emerging initiatives, things that he's working on specifically. So it was a very interesting conversation with him for about an hour. Last Tuesday, I participated, which was June 1st, I participated in the OCP Recreation, Culture, and Heritage Ideas Fair. And I know we've lost most of our audience, but WSP has done a really great job of making it interactive and interesting and as functional as they can. It's just not another old Zoom meeting. They've done a really good job of just making it engaging, and we actually got through it quicker than we anticipated. We had an hour set aside and we were done in about 50 minutes. So they've really got a nice streamlined way of doing it, and it's as good as we can get under these circumstances, I think. So I'm very impressed with how they've worked on that. And then on June 4th, which was Friday, we had a council training session on team building and governance processes that I attended, which was great. So that was it for me this week, last couple of weeks. Okay, Stuart.
I also spoke with Richard Cannings, attended the Ideas Fair, and participated in the training session.
Okay, good. Andy. We're going to have a lot of repeat because we were all there for a lot of this stuff.
Ditto on some of that. And I guess folks saw my my regional district report in the package, and I wondered whether there were any specific questions about that. Lots of meetings.
Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
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 Good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Really appreciate those reports. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, you're up.
May 27th, Roslyn Museum and Discovery Center meeting. We got the beginning stages of events and programming once COVID's as it's starting to disappear a little bit, in preparation for some reopening of events, which we're all looking forward to. Development committee meeting is waiting on some geotech stuff for soil sampling to determine if any remediation is needed prior to the target start date of the museum project on September 30th is the plan. And final budget preparation is in progress for that. June 15th will begin summer opening hours there, 10 to 6, 7 days a week. And they are awaiting the results of the ICIP grant, investing in Canada infrastructure, with results expected in sometime in the summer. I was also on the meeting with Mr. Cannings, with MP Richard Cannings, update from his desk on and discussion around current and future opportunities for Rossland and our local area. Heritage Commission meeting on the 31st. Heritage Commission will allocate $2,000 towards cemetery monument repairs up at the Columbia View Cemetery in preparation for a full-on estimate of completion of repairing the broken grave markers up there. It's gonna be quite a big job, I think. And we're working on updating 13 new heritage building plaques to complete the plaque revitalization project that we've been on for a couple of years, or a year. I participated in the OCP Idea Fair, and I also want to reiterate that it was sparsely attended and we need more people. So please, people, we need them filling out the surveys if they can't attend the sessions in person, please. And then on the second, Roslyn Museum and Discovery Center, again, we toured the upper level of the museum to determine the state of repair for the outbuildings in preparation for insurance discussions. And that is all. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Dirk.
Yeah, the Richard Canning meeting I attended as well. I enjoyed that. The training was really good. And then I did attend an OCP advisory committee meeting where we talked about the rollout of the engagement process and other comments on the whole process. And yeah, it's a really good engaged team, and I enjoyed that quite a lot. And that's what it for me.
Great. Terry.
Hey, I'll just thank you. I'll just add a couple of things. Just that our design review panel, again, back to that group, was a really good first meeting. So we had 4 new members join it, so that committee's now up to speed. And again, they're doing a lot of foundation work. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have some bench strength there. Like Dirk, I was at that advisory meeting for the OCP. It was really, that was a really great generative discussion there. And I did attend the Ideas Fair on June 1st for recreation, the Richard Canning piece, the training, thank you very much. And yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, great. So I'll repeat a few of these, but first I want to say that I know we've still got another meeting that will have Elma with us, but it is with great regret we say goodbye to Elma. But we understand the lure of the Okanagan. We understand the lure of lifestyle. We get it. You know, she's going to be missed. But I am so happy to welcome our new CFO, Michael Kennedy, who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. I was hoping to catch a glimpse of him there if staff would turn their camera on, if he is still in the room. I don't know if that's possible. Right there. Okay, let's see. Oh, there he is. Okay, hello, welcome. We will meet in person one day. You know, I have to say, I think you're joining us at a really exciting time, and thanks to Elma and the rest of the city staff, our financial procedures and policies are in such better shape. And in fact, the health of the finance department in the city has never been better. So you're coming in with you know, a good team to take over and good policies and procedures in place. And we know you come with extensive financial experience, and we're confident that you'll get up to speed on the municipal stuff and you'll fit well within our culture. And we're really, really happy to have you here. And it's particularly great that you were able to start before Emma leaves, so you have a little bit of time with her. So anyway, that's just great. We're glad you're here. Okay, so to continue, I have had my weekly interior health calls that continue with all the interior mayors. It's always good to hear about the continuation and the advancement of the vaccination campaign. They are concerned that now it's slowing down a little bit. Now we're having to reach out to the vaccine hesitant people, and that's you know, always a challenge. I do continue to send out the information that they send after those meetings. And there's always, well, not always, but often there's an opportunity to ask questions. So I'll mention again, if any of you have questions for the IH team, you know, funnel them to me and I'll ask. Usually the meetings are on Thursdays. Of course, this past week it was on Friday, which conflicted with our team building and training session, but it all worked out. Also attended the Zoom call with Richard Canning. And as you know, we don't have any updates on the grants we're waiting for or border reopenings, but that's hopefully coming one of these days. I just started, I'm now in the second week of a 10-week online course called Compassionate Civic Leadership. And of course, it's perfect timing as compassion and kindness seem to be in short supply in the civic world out there. There's 18 mostly elected leaders that are participate. There's some staff. And it is really interesting because people are all coming into it with you know, their own experiences in local government, the good and the bad. But it's a great place for, you know, sharing ideas and learning sort of new approaches about what's important and why we're all doing this kind of service anyway. So I think the course runs either once or twice a year, and I really highly recommend it. Okay, so then, yes, we had our team building, which was great. And I think our goal to finish our term strong and proud of our accomplishments before moving on to the next is a good goal for all of us and working together. And I feel confident that we'll be able to do that. I also did the OCP Arts, Recreation, Heritage, and Culture Ideas Fairs, echo what Chris said, we need more people. And same with the OCP Advisory Committee meeting. Let's see. Okay, then I did want to bring, this is something that came up in the email from Brian a while back, which was that we should perhaps make a motion to direct staff to set up an Indigenous training session for us. So if we would like to do that, I'd like to make that motion. Someone can second it. We can discuss and vote on it. Terry, you're seconding. Okay, does anyone have any comments on that, or you just think it's a good idea? Brian had found someone that was really good who'd worked with Fortis, and I think we're good for that. We'll leave it in staff's hands. Okay, all in favor?
Kathy,
yeah.
Just a comment. And so as far as acknowledgement, could we just tie back into what's happening there? I know is that part and parcel, or who are we teaming up with to get the acknowledgement down, Pat?
Well, I think they're kind of separate, but they may overlap as well. You know, we are having a meeting this week, you know, with Marilyn James of the SNIAT, but then I also have opportunity to reach out to some of the other bands. I haven't heard back from them, but we originally got doing this because we wanted to bring them into the OCP, the different First Nations that have used this area. That's part of what we're working towards. This training I see is kind of a little bit different, and we may, depending on when the training is, we may already have worked through a land acknowledgement or maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that hasn't happened, but the museum has been very involved. I know the library has too. Stuart.
My understanding of the direction that Brian was providing, and he can speak to it as well, I guess, but was that, you know, these are complicated matters and that we might be better prepared to discuss and decide upon acknowledgements after we've had more training.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's a really good point. I mean, we don't have a deadline on putting together a land acknowledgement, and we don't have a date for the training. So I think we're just going to this is something we're working on. So, okay, so all in favor of that motion? Okay, good. And then the other thing I want to bring up was just this the situation we had with Eric Blair's request that we do some kind of a waiver on a portion of his fee. And the only reason that I would entertain this at all is because if you know, if he doesn't know what it is because it isn't written on any of our communications, and if a staff person didn't inform him, and we don't know what happened when the staff person went there, but I just feel it's worthy of a discussion. So if anyone wants to make a motion on this, Chris?
I'll make a motion to discuss this.
Okay. Motion to discuss. All right. A seconder for the motion to discuss. Stuart, you'll second the motion to discuss. All in favor of the motion to discuss. That's a new one. We could probably just discuss on whatever. Okay, Chris, lead off our discussion.
Well, I think we're going to be faced with this quite often. You know, and I don't want to discount the fact that we have to pay for all of the services necessary. But I do think that we have to come to terms with what that service it actually is and how it's provided and what are the terms of that service. It seemed from Eric's perspective, as well as from a couple of other people, that it's a little bit loose in the face of an emergency. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I think that I think we owe it to our community to try to figure out a solution to help with emergencies.
Yeah. Well, it is important to note that I don't think any work happens until the homeowner has signed off on a work order saying they give permission to do it. And that's where I thought kind of the obvious thing was to put something on that work order. I'm going to call on Scott and then Janice. So Scott, did you want to speak? There you are.
Yeah, just one for clarification on that. We did update our water service on and off emergency on our website with information regarding of direction of what that is, including emergency turn off for, as it would be the homeowner's responsibility. So just want to update on that.
Okay, and does it also say what the homeowner could be charged, like with 4 hours of labor when two guys come out, or is there specifics?
No, I don't think that we want to go into specifics, because if you look at the background, it could be a 4 hour, it could be an 8 hour, and just to say a comment that it's going to be this price, you get into a really iffy thing. So again, we're updating it, and whatever further direction you want me to go through or any questions, just let me know.
Okay, Janice and then Andy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as Scott mentioned, that Eric did sign the work order. Scott provided that to us in correspondence around this when Scott was still working with Eric before he came to council. And you know, it does talk about you know, the homeowner understanding that they will be responsible for all fees and levies and charges so, you know, we've had this bylaw in place for quite a while, and we're just recovering our cost. We're not making money off it by any means. And I don't think we want to set a precedent where other taxpayers are paying for, even for emergency services for individual taxpayers, other property owners. So,
Andy.
I think it's great that the website's been updated. However, in an emergency, the last thing a person's likely to do is seek the information on a website. So one of the suggestions I had mentioned earlier is that we provide a simple pamphlet as well, if that's necessary, or it's like right on the work order that there is these charges are likely or required, especially when it's a weekend, when there is the extra, it's a call out after hours. So just to provide the customer with a little bit more information, I think is all that's really necessary. And I have to agree as well that I wouldn't support any break in this particular situation. We'd be inundated fairly quickly with those requests.
Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, I think I made the same point when we discussed this previously, but people aren't going to be happy when they have to pay out of pocket for these sort of expenses. I mean, there's just no getting around it. I mean, I'm really unhappy when I had to take my cat to the vet on a weekend and it cost me $800. You know, this is, you know, I don't think anything we're going to do is going to make the situation right or make people happy. They're not going to understand this stuff in advance. It's going to come as a shock and they're going to be pissed off. I mean, that's It's just how it is. I mean, I think as long as, you know, staff are reviewing it and we're doing the best we can to be transparent about it, well, that's sort of just how it is. And we just got to accept that we're going to have some unhappy people occasionally.
I think that's the problem, is that's one of the problems, is that they don't feel we were transparent about it, because we didn't. You know, Eric thought he was paying $100. He didn't know he was going to get charged for this other stuff, because either the employee didn't tell him that, he was panicked because his basement was filling up, whatever, which is why if there was some way to have it, the thing he signed says, yeah, there's $100 and then you'll be charged for an hourly rate of such and such. And then he'll be surprised by it's 8 hours or 4 hours, but not just completely surprised.
We're only responsible for what we do, not for what somebody else is, you know, we're responsible for what we say, not what other people hear.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why what we say should be very clear and in writing on the work order. Terry had his hand up, and then Janice.
Yeah, I think I want to go in and have a look at the wording that Scott has there, but I believe that, yeah, I really like the idea of a brochure attached to the work order. I don't suggest we do a mail drop or anything like that, because nobody's going to read that. It's when the emergency happens, and the crew shows up. If you haven't read the website and know what the charges are, here's a quick pamphlet before you sign, and just have some bullet points there, but it doesn't have to be pretty.
Yeah, Janice.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I went back and found the work order that was signed for that, and you know, it's as clear as it can be without. The only thing it doesn't have on there is an hourly rate, which is going to differ depending on if it's a weekend, the middle of the night. So even that's a challenge to try and, you know, give people an idea of what those total costs are going to be. The work order is pretty clear that the homeowner is responsible. And of course, it is an emergency crisis situation. People are panicking because their basement is filling up, preferably with water versus the other thing their basement could be filling up with. And they really just want that shut off. And yeah, so I'm not sure that there is a pamphlet in this world that is going to be that's going to get that information across to any homeowner that's in that situation at that time. You know, chances are they'll go back and read the pamphlet when they get their bill.
But then at least they'd know. Okay, Scott, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on one thing also, is that when we have an emergency call out, what happens and what's the direction to the staff who's on call, phones that person and notifies them, okay, is it an emergency? Is it on your side? Is it leaking in the road? Where is the leak, or is there sewer in the basement? And then there's kind of a template we've developed for the person on call that will state that any after-hour emergency will be the cost of the homeowner if the homeowners are on that side. Again, we can't hand them the pamphlet if the process is already started. If we're on site, the call out has been made, right? So the education part has to start basically at that point where the phone call happens. And if people are having problems understanding that, then we can reference for the website. In most cases, when there's an emergency, people just want people right away, turn off the water, make sure there's a coming in my basement. And that's a really troubling factor here. And I feel for the residents who are at that time, and money is really not they want the solution solved. And the biggest thing that's from our standpoint is, you know, we want to make sure that we can provide that service.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Scott. All right, staff and then Chris.
Yeah, just to follow up on that as well, I think the crux of the problem a lot of times is that someone's looking for a number so they know what that service fee is going to be. And the problem that we have is that in an emergency situation, going to a different house, looking at trying to find the location of that water main or sewer main, the blockage or the shutoff or whatever the case may be, different things will apply, and depending on the emergency, the different amount of time will be required by staff to complete that said emergency. So going back to Scott's point is that we have a lot of the disclaimer as much as we can in a generic fashion with the beginning information on that. It's just that people get upset when they think it's only $100 or it's 120, or they want to ask us how much it's going to be, and we can't confirm or deny anything because we don't know, because we have to do maybe more work on one location than the other if you either shut off that water main or whatever. And then if it's on our side, then obviously we're taking care of that kind of stuff. But that's all part of the investigation work. And as Scott says, no staff wants to go on a weekend somewhere and try to hammer a resident on a fee, but we also have a policy that we look at trying to recover those costs, and we try and do it as fast as we can in a transparent fashion. So the information, I think, is there. The frontline communication we can definitely work on, which I think we already do, but we can probably be more clear on that. But it kind of goes to Councillor Spooner's point that what you hear and what you think you heard and what you want to hear are not the same thing, and we try to do what we can to rectify the problem as fast as we can to minimize damage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Any other comments? Was there somebody else who's going to speak after staff that I've now forgotten? Was it Chris? Chris?
Yeah, I was going to, but
yeah,
Brian pretty much nailed that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So we had a motion to have a discussion on this, which is inconclusive. So if we want to have another motion to say that, we're going to let things stand, or we're going to send the guy a bouquet of roses, whatever we want to do. Anybody want to make another motion to close this off? Andy.
Just that staff are reviewing our policy and communication procedures on this for the time being. I don't know as far as providing more information, and that we aren't going to reimburse or lower the cost of the fees to this particular situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think staff is already, from our last conversation, staff is already looking to see how they could improve communication. So really what we're looking for here is that we're just not going to give a waiver to this particular individual.
I don't think we have to. I don't think we have to make a motion to not do anything, do we?
Well, we said we were going to send him an answer, and if we don't make a motion, then we're putting it on staff to come back with an answer. So I think we probably should. So unless staff doesn't want a motion.
Well, we don't, as again with Councillor Spooner, if you guys are making a motion to approve a waiver, we can correspond with the resident and say,
we're not doing anything.
We're not going to reimburse you. They're going to come back to council again. So, if you guys are prepared to have them keep on coming and potentially talking to you guys, then we can do that. But it's still, we don't really have to do anything in this matter unless we are going to waive a section of the fee that we have, because we're following our procedure and our policy. We're not going to be doing that. So
okay. Okay. Well, our motion was that we had a discussion. We did, and we're done. How's that? Okay. Okay. That's good. All right. Let's see. I think we're done because we don't have an in-camera tonight, and I don't think I had anything else on my notes. Okay. Everybody good? Motion to adjourn? Oh, yes. Somebody?
Yeah, I just...
Chris. Stuart? Somebody's speaking, and I'm not sure who it is.
I was motioning to adjourn.
Ah, okay, okay. All right, everybody good? We're out. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See y'all. Take care.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mike.
Welcome, Michael.